What if the internet just shut off right now? We know it's a terrifying thought, but it's one that we should actually think about more. The internet has become such a critical part of our lives. It's impacted how we work, socialize, and even think. So what would happen if it just suddenly vanished? Let's find out. No internet. No GPS. Without the internet, GPS systems would be useless. If you're driving long distance, you better have a paper map in your glove box, because without an internet connection, the GPS on your phone won't show you the way. And don't expect to get much help from Siri or Google Maps either. They need the internet to function. Same goes for any smart device like your thermostat. If it's connected to Wi-Fi, then it wouldn't be able to control itself anymore. You might be able to access some basic settings on the device itself, but many functions would be inaccessible. Your home security system would also be impacted. Many systems rely on cloud storage to record footage. So, if the internet went down, you would no longer be able to monitor your house remotely. Some systems can store video locally, but those are much more expensive and not widely used. The power grid might also take a hit if too many people start unplugging their smart devices. This is unlikely to happen today, though. Smart grids are typically set up to prevent this scenario from happening. Most devices will automatically disconnect after a certain amount of time without power to prevent overload when they re-plugged back in. But it's still something to keep in mind. But the biggest issue with no internet would be staying in touch with friends and family. Emails, texts, social media, all of it would cease to exist without the internet. There would be no more late-night texts to your friends or watching videos with your favorite influencers. This may sound like a relief to some of you, but it would be devastating to others who rely on the internet to communicate with loved ones. Some seniors and those living in remote areas use the internet to stay in touch with family. Others rely on video chat to talk to their loved ones who live far away. And what about international students or members of the military stationed overseas? Without the internet, it would be much more difficult to stay in contact with friends and family in other countries. Banks and credit unions would also be impacted. Customers would no longer be able to access their accounts or make transactions. And many businesses would be unable to process payments. Businesses could still accept cash, check, or debit card payments, but credit card transactions would likely stop. Banks and credit unions would still be able to transfer funds between accounts, but customers wouldn't be notified of any issues. They wouldn't be able to log in and check their balance or recent activity. There would also be no online banking, which would make managing your finances much more difficult. And speaking of business, many companies would struggle to operate. Even businesses that aren't directly impacted by the lack of internet would still experience disruption. For example, a company may lose access to an important software program or database that is stored on a cloud server. It might seem like simple customer service inquiries could easily be handled without the internet, but these days, most companies rely on AI chatbots for this. Human representatives are often only used for more complex queries. Without the internet, call centers would be flooded with irate customers. And what about your Netflix recommendations? Companies like Netflix, Amazon, and Spotify rely on the internet to collect data on users' viewing and listening habits. Without this data, they'd be unable to provide personalized recommendations. Of course, they'd still be able to provide their customers with entertainment, but it wouldn't be nearly as enjoyable. So what if you didn't have an account with these companies? Could you still watch a movie at home? Well, probably not. Without the internet, cable and satellite TV providers wouldn't be able to stream content. In fact, many streaming services wouldn't be able to provide any content at all. This includes Hulu, Disney+, YouTube, and Twitch. Cable providers do have some content stored locally, but it's typically limited to local channels and on-demand content that you've already paid for. It's unlikely that they would be able to provide anything else without the internet. This means no CNN, no ESPN, and no Netflix. But if you had a DVD player, you would be able to watch movies and shows that you had physically purchased. Otherwise, you'd have to head to your local library or video store to rent a movie. And if you wanted to see what was playing in theaters, you'd have to look in the newspaper or ask someone at the video store. Even more concerning, patients wouldn't be able to access their medical records. This could cause problems for doctors who need to quickly access important information about their patients. It could also cause confusion for patients who are trying to manage their own health. Without the internet, there would be no such thing as telemedicine. Patients in remote areas or with mobility issues would be particularly impacted. Some doctors also use online portals to communicate with their patients. This would no longer be possible, but it's not all doom and gloom. Some things would actually improve in a world without the internet. For example, people would be less distracted by their devices. Without the internet, there would be no social media to scroll through or videos to watch. People would have to find other ways to entertain themselves, such as reading a book or going outside. The air would be less polluted, since fewer people would be using electronic devices. There would also be less e-waste, since people wouldn't be constantly upgrading their devices. In fact, there would be a lot less trash in general, since most things would no longer be synced. With no more online shopping, people would have to reuse items more often. Without the internet, there would also be less cybercrime. Hackers would no longer be able to steal personal information or financial data. There would also be less spam emails and scam websites. In fact, the entire concept of internet trolling would become obsolete. And while there would be less crime, there would also be less news. Major news organizations have a significant online presence. Without the internet, they wouldn't be able to share their stories with the public. Some newspapers might continue to publish physical copies, but this is unlikely to happen. Fewer people are buying physical newspapers these days, so most news outlets rely on their websites for revenue. It's also worth noting that the internet isn't just a tool for consumers. It's also a powerful marketing tool for businesses. Without the internet, companies would have to rely on traditional forms of marketing such as television, radio, and print. This would make it more expensive to reach potential customers. Some companies might try to use word of mouth or direct mail, but these methods are unlikely to be as effective. Without the internet, the economy would take a major hit. Many companies would go out of business and the stock market would crash. There would also be widespread unemployment, as companies would need fewer employees to operate. And finally, there would be a lot more paper wasted. Without the internet, people would have to rely on physical copies of documents such as books and newspapers. This would require a lot more paper, which would deplete natural resources and harm the environment. As you can see, the internet has a profound impact on our lives. It's hard to imagine what life would be like without it. While there are some things that would improve in a world without the internet, such as less pollution and cybercrime, the negatives outweigh the positives. We would no longer be able to stay in touch with friends and family or access important information. We would also have to rely on more wasteful methods of communication and entertainment. But the biggest impact would be felt by businesses, who would struggle to operate, and the economy as a whole, which would take a major hit. So let's just hope that it doesn't shut down anytime soon. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and leave a comment below. And if you want to learn more about technology, check out the link in the description below. Thanks for watching!